Questions regarding lifestyles during the Vietnam conflict with Stephen Gard. What is your memory of the Vietnam conflict?
This is the first time I've had anybody ask me these questions, and it's been 30 years, so it's been a long time. Memories are that I enlisted into the military in October of '98. I was 20 years old. I went to Vietnam in April of 1969. I was 21 years old. Nervous, scared. That's where everybody was headed, was to Vietnam. I remember after I was in Vietnam, there was a sign somebody had wrote over there on a wall, was the vacation spot of the world, because that's where we all went. I remember leaving Gulfport, Mississippi, flying on a C-141, flew all the way over to Vietnam on it. It's a long trip. I remember landing in Da Nang. Remember when we started to get off the plane and the doors was open, that the heat of Vietnam just blasted you right in the face like a blast furnace. It was so hot. And at that same time, there was a jet going down the runway, had its afterburners on, and there was bombing going on out in the mountains around Da Nang and stuff. I was scared. I also thought about, what was a little kid from Darwin, Illinois doing over here, which I'm sure everybody had the same thoughts. After we landed in Da Nang, we had to wait 6 or 7 hours before we could fly on up to our base. We took a C-130 up to our base, which was Dong Ha, which is in the northern I Corps. I remember flying up there, we had to sit down on the floor of the plane, and we had cargo nets across our laps. When we got up there, we all thought we'd gotten hit, because when we came in, the plane dropped straight out from under us, came straight down, and I'm thinking, it's over with already. And at that time, that's how they come in. They don't come in low so they don't get shot at. So that was scary. The first night over there, too, we got in late. They just told us to go find a bed somewhere and crawl up on it. Didn't have no mattresses or nothing, just old bed springs. And then we had to muster the next morning and start to work. We worked 6 days a week, 10, 12, 14 hours a day. I was a CB. I was an Alpha company. Built roads, bridges, base camps, whatever needed done. We built a road out of Dong Ha, which was Highway 9, which led to North Vietnam. We worked many, many months on this road, tore down half a mountain, built bridges, went way up into the mountains. It was beautiful over there. But also after we had left, and then years later, the North Vietnamese, they used this road to invade South Vietnam. That's kind of ironic. Remember also that there was 9 of us from Marshall that we all entered into the Seabees at one time. We all went through Gulfport, Mississippi, Company 94, not 104, Company 94. But there was 9 of us from Marshall. Remember one of the boys that I went through basic training with, name was Charlie Coberline. He was from New York. He drove a auto car, which was a tractor semi that hauled gravel. And when they got to the spot they needed to, they dumped the gravel. He ended up getting killed over there with a mine. I still think of him all the time. There was some good memories over there, some not so good. I know about every third day we had to stand guard duty, whether you liked it or not. Sometimes at 2 o'clock in the morning, sometimes at 4 o'clock in the morning after you'd worked all day. It was unbelievably hot. I remember the first time we had our big rain. I'm from the country and from the farm that when it rains, you're rained out. But over there, it rained like crazy, and I thought, boy, we're not going to work for a week. Just a few hours later, it was dry again, ready to go. It was unbelievable. The clay over there was a red clay. After you worked around in it, you just come in, you was just red with the dust. Some of the best times we had was every couple months we'd get to have a USO show come through and get to watch it, and that was a big highlight. Traveling bands and groups that was from Australia and Manila, and I'm sure some from the U.S. Plus we also got to go on R&R one time each tour. I'd made 2 tours over there. That was definitely a good time. Get away, let your hair down. What hair we have now. At that time, it seemed like the right thing to do. Now that I'm 50 years old, and I look back, it wasn't the right thing to do. I know that's what it was at that time. The government and everybody had talked us into it, but it was a useless war. It was a political war. It wasn't never meant to be won, because with all the firepower and the people we had, we could have if they really wanted to, but they didn't. So that's what's a joke about the whole thing. A lot of young men died. A lot of 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old guys. 58,000 of them died. So that's about all my memories right now of Vietnam.
Do you remember any protests or rallies with the anti-Vietnam sentiment over there or on TV?
While we was over there, we didn't have any TV or anything. Once I'd gotten back home, you could see on the national news every night there was protests and rallies against Vietnam and stuff that was going on. There was Kent State. There was a lot of people up in arms against it. But while we was over there, you'd hear about it, but you didn't actually see it.
What did people in Marshall do to help men and women in Vietnam?
To my recollection, I myself never received anything other than letters and stuff from my family. I received care packages from my family, from my mom mainly. But I can't think of anything that people had done. Maybe they had, but I was not aware of it.
Do you know what the community was wearing during this time period?
What I can recall is that bell bottoms was a big thing. I know I liked wearing them. A lot of the kids had their hair longer and wore beads and necklaces and headbands and peace symbols. Men wore their suits and stuff was narrow lapels, thin ties, straight leg pants that I can remember.
What type of music, shows, and people were popular then?
I don't remember the shows, and I don't remember too many people other than Jane Fonda, and she wasn't popular. The music, the ones that come to my mind real quick was Creedence Clearwater, which was one I really, really liked, and Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Mamas and the Papas, Donovan, Mellow Yellow, just to name some. Plus the Grand Funk Railroad was a good one.
Was it an important topic in Marshall to discuss, or was the problem avoided?
I'd imagine that the discussion of Vietnam was over coffee every morning. People would talk about it, I'm sure. People that had loved ones over there, I know they was involved with keeping up of where their loved ones were at, or how close they came to getting it or whatever. But personally, I don't know because I wasn't there. But that's what I would guess it was. Just loved ones talking about their own family that's over there.
How were the soldiers welcomed when they came home?
The soldiers were not welcomed when they came home. It's as if they just slipped right back into society and nobody knew anything about them, where they'd been. I remember walking down the street after I'd got back and running into a person that was a year or so older than me, and they'd ask me, where I'd been, if I'd been off to college, because they didn't know. I also remembered what was very strange about this war compared to other wars was that one day you're in Vietnam, out in the middle of nowhere. The next day, you're back in the United States of America, driving down Interstate 70 like it's nothing. And that was the hard adjustment for me. I know I had to go 72 hours at least before I could just get so tired I'd finally fall asleep because it was so strange. That was a really hard adjustment.
How old were you then when you went, and then when you came back and you were done with Vietnam then?
Yes, I went to Vietnam in April of 1969. I was 21 years old. I got back on the 5th of December of 1969, and then I went back over in April of 1970, and I got back Veterans Day of 1970. I'd have been 22.
Yeah. How did Marshall react when the war was ended?
The only thing I can remember about when the war was over was just watching national news at nighttime, and how people were so scared over there, and everybody that was collaborated with the United States was trying to get out so they wouldn't be harmed. It's about all I remember of it.
Would you like to add anything to this?
The only thing I'd like to add is I want to thank my daughter Stephanie for asking this of me. I would have never guessed 30 years ago that I'd had a child asking me about Vietnam. But I want to thank you. There's still some memories that's there that I didn't say on this tape because it'd take a long tape for me to... And hopefully one of these days somebody will listen to this and it'll bring back some memories of theirs. Thank you very much.